Cool. Awesome. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to our virtual webinar series. I'm Ashley. I'm one of the new EM interns, and we are kicking things off tonight with our PD, APDs, and our resident meet and greet. So this is just really an opportunity for all of you to learn a little bit more about the emergency medicine residency program here at Rush. Hear all the things about what makes our program unique and a little bit about Chicago in general. I remember as an applicant last year, I had to do the same thing, having to do things virtually, trying to get a good feel for a residency program. And I definitely relate to a lot of the maybe anxiety that you guys feel about this upcoming match cycle. So really, this is just the opportunity for you to really ask some questions, get to know all of us as faculty. Sorry, I just had to mute someone, but that's okay. So really just have the opportunity to meet us, kind of see what we're all about here at Rush. With that, I'm gonna turn things over to our program director, Dr. Hexam, and have him tell you a little bit about the program here at Rush and just a general introduction before we jump into some of the submitted questions that came over from the Google form.
All right, well, thank you, Ashley. Everybody, welcome to virtual interview season round 2. I had no idea a year ago when we did this for the first time that we'd be doing this all over again, all online again. And here we are. What I can tell you is this is all going to work out. We were all really nervous about this last year when we were trying to scramble to make this all work and turn our platforms into online tours and interviews. And it was a lot of work. I can tell you that we all got through it. We matched probably our most diverse, passionate, exciting, wonderful class that we've had at Rush ever. And it all worked out for them. It's going to work out for you. So I know that this is really stressful. And this may be the first one of these that you've done. Maybe you've done a whole bunch already. You'll probably get tired of these as we go along. I hope that this serves as a chance for you to learn a little bit about us and what kind of makes us tick and how we as a program come together and what's really unique and special about us. And we're going to try and get as much information out there as we can so that you can come back to us in 3 months, 4 months as you start getting your rank list together and actually remember, hey, what did you feel when you were on these webinars with some of our residents? And did you feel like you could connect with them and be one with us as part of what I think is just a really highly functioning professional family that we have here at Rush. I am astounded by just the excitement that I see in our interns having gone through this, and they all did really well. So deep breath. It's going to be a long couple of months, but you guys are going to get through this and you will find the right place for you. A little bit about Rush. We are a relatively young program. We just graduated our second class of residents. We're a 3-year residency program in urban Chicago. We are in the medical district, which is one of the most, I think, diverse, exciting, great places for emergency medicine. We have a long history in Chicago of training great emergency physicians. Rush is joining that club, and I think we've done a great job in building a program over a few short years here at our center. We're an academic medical center. You do most of your rotations here at Rush. And then we send you out to some of the hardest, most challenging emergency departments in the city to get additional training in trauma, pediatrics, and I think it ends up being a really nice, diverse mix of patients. So with that, I want to see what you guys have to want to know more about. We've got some questions that you've come up with, and we'll kind of dive into it. I want to turn it over to some of my other staff and residents so that they can say hello and you can put some more names to faces. So again, my name is Braden Hexam, and I'll turn it over to Scott.
Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. I am currently sitting in a car in Vernon Hills, about 50 minutes from where I live, outside my kids' soccer practice, which is where I spend 90% of my time. So hopefully you can hear me okay. But I am Scott Heinrich. I'm one of the APDs. And definitely happy to answer any questions. I think Braden did a really good job of summarizing. I do want to make it really important. We love having you guys on here. I know this is a stressful thing. You do not need to be obligated to come to every single one of these for every single place everywhere, because it's just a lot of time for you. So this is really, truly for us, for you guys to get to know us. This is not to mark off who's here and who's interested. This is really just for you guys to figure out stuff. So I don't want to add any more stress to your already stressful time.
All right, I guess I'll go next. I am Kasha Gore. I am the other APD. I'm in my home, but my home is not that large, and you may hear my children behind me. They're playing a Pokemon board game that we just got. We also I started playing Pokemon Go, and it's my like dirty little secret. I walk around with my phone recently playing Pokemon Go, and I'm like, man, I'm in the medical center. Is anyone gonna see me playing Pokemon Go? But so that's me recently. Hi, Jake. Do you want to say hi to everybody? Oh, did you get hurt? Okay. This is one of my kids. His name is Jake, and yeah, I do the scheduling. So I'm the scheduling APD, and I juggle quite a bit. And so please let us know whether it's questions about residency or just about life as a physician. Also, more than happy to answer.
Good. Next, we have a few of our residents who are also on here. Harrison, I see you up here first, so we'll jump to you first if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sounds great. I'm Harrison. I'm one of the threes and one of the chief residents. I'm from Boston originally. I went to college in New York City, and then I went to med school at Rush and stayed here for residency. I won't belabor our introductions because I'm sure you guys want to get to actual questions. I see Evie and Nico, so I'll send it to Evie.
Hey guys, great to see you. I'm Evie. I'm a second year at Rush. I'm originally from Missouri, did undergrad in St. Louis, and then came up to Chicago for med school, and definitely wanted to stay for residency too. My kids are also in the room. So if you hear any noise from their iPads, that's what's going on. All right, Nico, you're up.
Hey guys, I am Nico. I am originally from Chile and then moved to Miami and then did post back in New York and then came to Chicago. So I can't stay on the phone call for too long. So I'm gonna write my email. Feel free to ask me any questions. I'm happy to answer anything for the next few weeks and months. I'm sure you'll have a lot of interesting questions for us. But I'm really excited for you guys, and hopefully we'll see some of you next year as a colleague.
And then I also see Hans is on here as well.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Hans. I'm one of the second years as well. I'm originally from Colombia. Moved to Chicago, did my undergrad here at Loyola, medical school at UIC. Now, very proud to be at Rush. So that's me.
And then I also see my fellow co-intern, Lola.
Everyone, I'm Lola. I'm born in Nigeria, raised in Toronto, Canada. I went to St. George's University in Grenada, and I'm excited to hopefully meet some of you guys.
All right, thanks everyone. So without further ado, we're gonna kind of jump right into things. So to start things off, if we could have Braden tell us a little bit about what the overall structure is of the program here at Rush. Are we a 3-year? Are we a 4-year? What do we got going on over here?
So we're a 3-year program, and rather than I think talk about block schedules and structures and stuff, I might talk a little bit about how we actually started to design the program in the first place. Kasha and Scott and I, it's really been an incredible ride to be part of this faculty that got to build a brand new residency program. And we did it at an institution that really supported what we were doing. We actually, when you sit in a room and you get to think about all of the things that we hated about residency and could get rid of, and actually think about the things that we really loved about residency and build more of that, that's where we really started with the whole curriculum. And the first thing that we really thought about deeply was the intern experience. Most programs, most of us did residency at places where they send you somewhere else for a whole year. right? You do all those off-service rotations. You go to surgery and trauma and L&D and anesthesia. I didn't get to come to the emergency department until June of my intern year. Nobody knew who I was, right? I had spent this whole time elsewhere. And I felt that that was a big miss. Why not learn from emergency physicians? Why go off service for your first year? Spend more time in the emergency department where it's actually emergency physicians that get inside your head rather than all of these other subspecialists and traumatologists and people who are doing all of these off-service rotations for you. So we actually have you spend a significant amount of time in your first year with us in the emergency department. You spend 7, I think even 8 months when you add in some of our off ED time in the emergency department doing ED stuff. And that means you get to see sick patients right up front. We don't have a lot of graduated responsibility. If you are a brand new intern, I want you seeing the sick patients. I don't want to reserve that for just my senior residents. Now, I might change how I supervise you in that, right? If you're an intern seeing really sick cases right up front, but I would rather you spend more time with us that intern year. And what that means is the structure. If you look at our block schedule, it's available online. You'll actually notice that we have you go back and do some of those off-service rotations later in your second and third year, so that when you go to the ICU, you're the senior resident in the ICU. When you're in the trauma ICU at Mount Sinai, which is one of our partner sites, you are running that ICU. You actually go there with some skills and knowledge so that you actually can participate in care and actually go there with some goals in mind about what it is that you want to learn when you go off service. So we do that later in the program rather than earlier. And I think that it really helps build our program and our residents into much, much stronger emergency physicians. So that's kind of the general overview of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that for applicants, we obviously have a lot of information that's on our program's website that talks a little bit about the structure, what rotations we do, a little bit about our core curriculums. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at those as well. I think one of the next questions that comes up often that applicants want to know is what the typical procedure volume is like. I don't know if any of our other faculty could kind of talk a little bit about the types of procedures we do and kind of how often or how many procedures residents do as well over their 3 years. See if there's any takers.
I can take that. That's fine. I think overall, procedures wise, you're going to be getting procedures from the beginning, like that. What Braden was just talking about, the lack of graduated responsibility. You can be intubating in your first week of your residency, right? I am pretty sure that there is somebody on this call that had intubated somebody in their first week of residency, right? And so you're going to get those procedures from the beginning. And a lot of times the way we have things set up, there's usually, multiple, there's an intern plus a senior somewhere inside the department. And when there's a critical case that comes in, we dealt out those responsibilities, whoever's patient it is can kind of make those decisions. And most of the time, multiple people get involved. Now, I think a lot of the procedures end up happening on our community months, right? So in the community, you may see things working a little differently than at the big university, right? And so the community sites, I feel like are really the places, the bread and butter places where you're going to get a ton of your central lines and your even your intubations, things like that. But we still do them definitely at the university setting. I just think that the community sites end up being your places where you end up getting really comfortable with those procedures. Our procedure logs, I feel like when I look at the procedure logs for our third years, I don't feel like they're lacking in any one single procedure. I think the procedure that's really hard to come by everywhere is LPs. Now that we have these lovely big old CT scanners that can detect blood pretty darn well, we LP less headaches, things like that. And so overall, in general, across the United States, LPs are one of those procedures that's getting less and less common to do. And so I mean, again, our procedure log wise, if I'm doing my end of year evaluations with my second and third years, they've got their procedures down packed. So maybe the residents want to speak to that as well.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. So to put like some money where the mouth is, in my first 2 months at Rush, I had at least 15 intubations. Granted, I had like anesthesia pretty early on, but that's only a 2-week rotation. And some of my other intubations were actually in the ED. And then within like 3 or 4 months, having gone to one of our community sites, I had at least 25 intubations. And even more difficult procedures to get, I've assisted a crike at Rush, and I've driven the fiber optic, done innumerable paracenteses, and then also like lumbar punctures. I've been pretty lucky too. I've got at least 6 and 2 in babies, and that's pretty awesome considering I've only been around for a year.
Yeah, thanks so much for providing your perspective. And I think Harrison, you could even probably speak to things now as one of our chiefs and senior residents.
Yeah, sure. I think that one of the keys that I find and think is really important is that the procedures, the first dibs is for the residents. So especially now as a senior, I don't need any more procedures for anything. And I'm at the beginning of my third year. And so whenever I'm in the Rush emergency department, I look around to see who the junior interns are, the interns or junior residents are, even if they're in another section of the ED, because I would prefer to give them the procedure and have me supervise. That's part of like the progression of becoming an attending physician, is learning how to become more of like that supervisory role and like troubleshooting problems and coaching others through it. So definitely that's like the culture of our emergency department. I mean, I had my intern year, my first chest tube was a third year who told me like, hey, you're going to do this chest tube over here. I'll set everything up for you, no problem. And I feel like we've tried to continue that. I've definitely given the first intubation to 2 of the second years. So like, that's our culture. I think one of the other kind of questions around this kind of procedure thing is like, who has procedures? Does anesthesia try to seal our airway? Does like surgery try to take all our chest tubes? And at least in our emergency department, we have first dibs of everything. I think for patient safety, you know, if you have a like a chronically ill child that has been known to be a difficult airway, it's the smartest thing for the patient and the family to get like, you know, your backup pediatric anesthesiologist involved. But aside from that, I mean, any like sort of reduction, like ortho reduction is ours first. And ortho doesn't want to do them. They'd rather be in the OR anyway. So if we can do them and save them the trip down to the emergency department, or even just save them having to write the note, they're more than happy to let us do it. So we don't have competition against other services for procedures.
Thanks, Harrison, for chiming in on that. Our next question, I will pass over to Kasha. What changes, if any, have really come with the program recently? And what were sort of some of the characteristics or reasons as to why those changes occurred?
Sure. Yeah. I'm the chair of the program evaluation committee. And as part of that responsibility, we do our annual program evaluation. And every year we revisit like what changes have happened and what can we be doing better. And so we have to actually formally write all this stuff down. And we're in the process. We're going to have our PEC meeting on Thursday to go over all this. But some of the things I think that have evolved is one of our biggest ones is how where our residents go in the hospital for ICU. So our ICU rotation used to be in the general MICU with all the other internal medicine residents, and the feedback from our residents was, hey, it's a little saturated. We want some more autonomy. We want some more exposure as like the primary people. And so we moved our ICU rotation. Now we have an ER team that is responsible for the adult ICU in the hospital, and that is also evolving in that there is a fellow that is this year was the first year, right, Braden? That there's a fellow that is that is, sometimes going to be an emergency medicine fellow, because we're doing not just home critical care fellowship, but also just a critical care fellowship. And so all of that is evolving. And one of the things that I'm really proud of is Ben, one of our scheduling chiefs, took it upon himself to be like, I really want to make this schedule, not just for my own, department. I'm going to make sure that our schedule for the AICU is a fair schedule. And he also said, I'm going to take over the side-eye schedule because that thing was a mess. And we want to make sure that our residents are, having a good time at our offsite rotations. So he took it upon himself to make a schedule for that. That's kind of a standard schedule. And so in most of these changes, all of this stuff is so resident driven. That's the thing that I'm most proud of. I think that all of the stuff that comes up in PEC and that we make and evolve as we go along is so resident driven. It's really the main reason why we are making the changes that we're making. And it's all based on the feedback that we're getting from the residents. So those are some of the more recent changes. Braden, do you want to chime in at all as to like anything else that you can think of that's come up recently?
Yeah, probably the other major change has been in trauma. Again, as a young program, we thought a lot about what are the things we really need to do well. We're a university medical center. We're not a trauma center. We do see a fair number of walk-in trauma, but it's rather accidental in a way. So as a newer program, we really wanted to make sure that you get just as much trauma, if not more, than every other residency program in Chicago. I mean, that's why people come to Chicago for residency, as to see just a really impressive trauma program. And so what we did is we looked around and we actually had residents go to both Stroger Cook County Hospital and do a rotation there. We also have them go over to Mount Sinai Hospital, which is a smaller community teaching hospital in about 1.5 miles southwest of the medical district. Both see very, very high volumes of trauma, both penetrating as well as blunt trauma. And we probably overcompensated a little bit. We had the biggest feedback we got was probably too much trauma. And actually we've scaled it back a bit based on resident feedback that, they feel really solid on trauma. We don't need to do as many months as we do. So actually starting, I guess it was 2 years ago, we scaled back trauma enough that we really are very deliberate about the kind of trauma you see. You actually spend most of your trauma experience at Mount Sinai, which the residents were telling us that was the more rewarding, better site in order to see that. So it continues to evolve. And I like that because we continue to listen to the feedback of the residents on, are you guys getting to see enough? Do you need more? Do you need less?
Yeah, thanks for answering that question, a little bit about the changes with the program. One of the next questions here, which I think actually one of our junior and senior residents could talk a little bit about, what is sort of the average number of patients that you guys typically see in a shift? And how has that changed compared to when you were like an intern, second-year resident, and then third-year resident? I think I have Harrison. Sorry, you're like the first one I see over on my screen.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I think I'm the only third year on this call too. There are no number expectations, and things change as the year moves on. So, it is September tomorrow. So I as a supervising senior resident don't expect a September intern to be seeing every single patient on our board. That is not feasible. And then just like nationally, the average attending should expect to see 2 to 2.5 patients per hour. So if an intern is not seeing that, that's like totally okay and on par. And there are no like number expectations. I can't remember if it was Braden or Scott, but somebody told me in intern year, like you should always feel just a little bit out of control and uncomfortable on your shift as you're learning. And so as you're trying to push yourself, you're trying to grow and learn and get faster and get better and more efficient. And then of course you always have an attending that's your safety net that's going to make sure that nothing ever goes wrong. And so in terms of numbers now, I mean, at this point, starting second year, I started to say like, okay, like, intern year, I'm just trying to learn and see as much as I can, but see them well and not let anything fall through the cracks. And now starting second year, I started like marking down times as to when I start seeing a patient. So then I can look at the end of my shift and say like, okay, like, did I meet that 2 hour per patient mark? And you know what, there was a shift I had like 3 months ago with a super sick guy who I saw like 4 patients that whole shift. We luckily had like an office service intern who was awesome, who was like seeing a lot of other patients, and my attending was doing a lot of other stuff, but this guy just required a ton of care and attention. And so sometimes that happens, especially in like a academic tertiary care center where we see like very sick people with super extreme and strange diseases and different surgeries and experimental treatments. So, you know, I would say the goal is to aim for 2 per hour by the end of your residency. When you're an intern, you just see the patients that you can, and you see them well, and you see them thoroughly so that you can learn.
And so like, so Evie and I just worked together Sunday night, and it was just me and Evie, no one else. And so essentially I told her, every patient's yours until you tell me you're beyond what you can't do. And so she saw every patient on that shift. And so it's really just limited by the amount we're getting through. And so a lot of it's going to be shift dependent and somewhat site dependent. As Harrison said, a lot of the patients we see are going to be more complicated. You have more signouts potentially. So you're still doing a lot of care on even non-new patients versus some of the community sites. They may not be as medically complex. So it's going to differ kind of each place you go.
In terms of the progression, like my first month of intern year, I saw 4 per shift, which is a lot lower than 2 to 2.5, which is the eventual goal, right? Now I'm getting closer to 1.5 per hour. And including signouts, that crazy Sunday, we saw, I think, 28 and probably like 12 news.
And this is a great transition actually into our next question, which was to sort of describe a little bit about the patient population that we see here at Rush. Kasha, I know that you had wanted to take this one. If you could tell us a little bit about what our patient population is here.
And I just put my name down for a bunch of stuff, but like if anybody else wants to chime in, please chime in. But I think the overall, like statistics, the things that you will hear quoted to you in general in the medical district area. So it's not just us, it's like county and UIC, we're all share patients. We're going to see about a third white, third Black, third Hispanic is like the general quote. And then there's definitely some other subgroups in there. We actually have been seeing a lot more Chinese population based on the issues that have been going on with Mercy Hospital. And so that patient population has been kind of absorbed into the medical district area. And so that's a general kind of from a race perspective. But the other thing that kind of goes into this is, you know, we do see a variety of socioeconomic status as well, right? So we see the west side of Chicago, we see lots of homeless population, we see a very affluent population as well, people that choose to come to Rush because it is an amazing institution with lots of specialty care. People come from Indiana and Wisconsin to get care at Rush. And so we do get a very large variety. We see a ton of bread and butter stuff, but we also do see that academic population that's going to have a medical list of problems this long. They're going to be complex. I was talking to my friends the other day who are in community settings about, okay, you know what, every time I like prescribe a antibiotic for simple cellulitis, I have to think, okay, is this a transplant patient? Do we have to think about renal function? Do we have to think about hepatic function? So, you know, even the things that seem simple and seem pretty straightforward in a community setting that you would expect are never quite the same at Rush. And so, but overall, we do see a very large variety. I feel like I'm never bored and I never feel like I'm just constantly seeing the same thing.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think that really describes it perfectly. I don't know if any other faculty or residents kind of want to chime in either. We can jump to the next question.
I guess I would just add, you know, when I came to Rush, one of the things that I was really excited about was just having an institution that really focused on the entire community that we see. And that stretches along geographic spectrums, socioeconomic, racial spectrums. what was really important to me is I've worked in a lot of places. I've worked in county hospitals, community sites, academic places. I really wanted a place where if I'm going to go into a room and take care of a patient, I want to be able to utilize all of my resources to be able to take care of them really well, regardless of what they look like or what their circumstances in life might have been like. And I feel that more than any other place I've ever worked, I feel that I can accomplish that at Rush. We have some pretty incredible services that we can leverage to really get done things in the emergency room that don't get done in a lot of other places. We have 24-hour social workers. We have an active addiction medicine program where we can actually initiate Suboxone in the emergency department. We are really trying to make a headway in some of these disparities in medicine, and you're going to feel that and see that play out in the emergency department. So that's a bit about how I think that diversity in our experiences and what we see actually relates to what kind of medicine you can practice. And I'm really proud of the kind of medicine we can practice at Rush.
Our next question talked a little bit about what the culture is like between residents and faculty. And I think actually hearing from Lola and myself even though we're new to the program at Rush, like we were similar to like what you guys are going through. Like I had never seen the hospital or had even walked into the emergency department here at Rush until my first day of orientation. And already I like the month and a half that I've been here can see the strong relationships that we have with all of our staff, with our consultants. I've always had like pleasant and wonderful conversations with anyone that I've had to consult for a patient. Our nurses are so amazing with what they do. And I would say overall, it's just the people is really what I'd heard about why people love Rush so much. And now after being here for the past month and a half, like I completely agree. I'm sure Lola might be able to kind of talk to that as well, being an intern as well.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I'll add is I love that we had like an orientation month, which is basically a month to kind of get your skill set prepared for the emergency department. But all of the interns, we spent so much time together during that month. And so we've been able to build our like relationships like outside of work. So that's also really nice. And one thing everyone says is that everyone at Rush is so nice. And it's like, I'm not even exaggerating, even like people from different specialties. Like I'm not scared to call other services like I did in medical school because everyone's super nice.
I just want to add that we have an attending resident WhatsApp group for Peloton riders. And so we all like talked to that. So like a couple of weeks ago, it was me, Ashley, and Ben. We're like, hey, let's ride. So the three of us just kind of rode together and we're like, could talk and do stuff there. So we really do try to interact outside of the department. We have the retreat. We have journal clubs that different attendings host at their places. We actually have attending and resident wellness committees. And so it's really something we try to do to interact. So we're not just coworkers, but we actually hang out and talk outside of the department. It's not unusual to get texts, especially because I work nights at all random hours from some of the residents and stuff. And I think that's part of the culture that we all wanted. That's why we're here. And so it's really important for us as leadership and as faculty and as residents that stays and that is part of the culture, is that we don't just work together, but we're all family.
Yeah, like I'll just add one more thing. Like Lola mentioned, we had an entire month for orientation where we were doing social events like 1 or 2 times a week for that whole month. And it wasn't just the residents, like not just the interns who were showing up, but we had second and third year residents coming. We had attendings who were coming, attendings who would offer to have us over at their house, like after the events, and get food for everyone and drinks. And it was incredible to really see that in the first month. And we all got to know each other so well, versus just having a week of orientation and then being like, all right, well, enjoy your shifts. So I really love how we got to really get to know one another. And now I'm like sad that I don't see my co-residents quite as often, except when we're signing out to each other. It makes me miss that first orientation month for sure. The next question that I have for our faculty, if you could talk a little bit about what your passion was for starting not only a new residency program, but maintaining your positions in leadership here at Rush. I'll have Braden start first.
Wow, that's a great question. I've not had it like that before. Why am I still doing this? I love this. I remember graduating from residency and thinking, this is a really special time. Residency is going to be some of the toughest years of your life. But I loved residency. I loved getting to do the things that I got to do for the very first time and have an impact like I did. And to be able to be involved in kind of mentoring and developing careers as you kind of think about what you want to do with your practice. That was just a great opportunity to see a program getting started in Chicago, a city I really love. I had been involved in medical student education. I graduated residency from Mount Sinai in New York City, and had spent a lot of time mentoring medical students, but they come and go. I only had them for a month, and I really wanted to make an impact on a longer term with a residence. And so my passion is getting to see where you all go. Most of you maybe have a little idea of what you want to do. You probably have no idea what you want to do. You're probably coming up with answers to things you're maybe not actually passionate about. I hear a lot of ultrasound and global health and simulation and things that you're doing to really define yourself and become interested. In a year, it may totally change. And I want to be able to help you kind of think about what those pivots are going to look like in your career so that you can be as successful as possible. And so I love graduation because I get to see where all of our residents go. And our residents have, I think, done a great job getting their careers launched. So that's what keeps me passionate and keeps me here.
Gosh, I don't know if you want to go next, but I can go also. First off, I have to apologize, as you guys can tell, as my residents and students can tell, I'm not normally this ominous, but it's just really dark and stormy and windy here, so I apologize. I look like I'm frightening. I'm really not. But kind of answering the question, why am I in this? It's going to sound corny, but it's because of you guys. So I think I probably know half the people on this. Like, a lot of them are my students. Some of them I've actually volunteered to mentor from or advise from other universities just because I like doing it. And this is the reason we do this, and the reason I do this is to make my career longer, because this really does bring us joy. There's other jobs we can do to make more money, but working with you guys, the students and residents long term, this really gives me personal joy and makes my job better. And so that's why I'm in residency education. It's not the easiest path, but it's the path that I really like seeing you guys succeed and watching you go from med students, if I've known you before, to residency, to attending, so now teaching my residents and being colleagues out there. And that's why we do it. And I think everyone always talks about burnout. And for me personally, working with residents and students makes it less likely for me to burn out, because you actually enjoy going to work and teaching. And I enjoy going to the classroom and teaching you guys in the classroom. And that has extended my career. And I think I could work so much longer and keep doing this until I retire because of you guys. Where if I were just a cog in the machine at some other place, just showing up to my shifts and having not you guys to work with, I don't think I could do it as long. And so that's why I'm passionate about what I do and why I keep doing it.
I'm not going to belabor any points that have already been made, because I think that kind of speaks to most of why the people that do academics. It's similar to raising. I don't mean this in any infantilizing way, but like, it's similar to raising kids. Like, it's hard to raise kids. It's hard to be a leadership and residency program. There's always challenges, but it's that joy that comes from like fixing things and solving problems and doing things to not be stagnant. That like brings me personal joy. And I always like that. Just the challenge and the new learning that I get to do as a result of the things that happen with the residency. So.
All right, thank you all so much for your responses. Our next question sort of jumps back into a little bit about structure. I think this one will be a good one for you, Harrison, as our conference chief. If you can kind of talk a little bit about what our sim lab experience is like, and those teaching shifts that we have to sort of practice some of our skill sets on our conference days.
Sure. So I think, so my job, our chiefs are divided into different roles, and my job is to organize our like academic conference, our protected ACGME time. We have Thursday mornings for 5 hours. As part of that, which I think that there's some version of like a schedule online of like our longitudinal program. We have like a lot of sim and hands-on experience. So almost every other week we have a simulation session, and then 8 to 12 times a year we also have like hands-on ultrasound training as part of our didactic conference. So we call it like didactic conference, but there are very few days when we have 5 hours of conference. Scott's my like faculty like counterpart, and we're both anti sitting through 5 hours of lecture every week because we're emergency medicine people. We have attention spans of like 30 seconds. So the more like hands-on things we can do, the better. And then for simulation in particular, we typically alternate between like our sim lab sim experience and then our in situ sim experience. So every other sim experience, about once a month, we have in the emergency department at the beginning of our shift before they open that like last wall of CPOD, we'll have like sim in those exact rooms that we literally take care of patients in, which I find enormously helpful because it's always where the rubber meets the road that's the problem. I'm sure you guys as med students did sim labs where you do like an airway lab and you have like all your airway stuff just like on this table, and you're like, oh, what's this? Let me use this. But when you actually need to like intubate a patient or like or attend to them critically, it's like, wait, where is it in this cart that I use every day? Like I need to actually know where like the stylet sits. Where does the suction sit in the cart? And so getting used to actually doing it in the same exact rooms that we actually take care of patients in, I think adds just like an extra layer of authenticity and like real life practice.
It's
other
not just, it's not, oh, sorry. It's
I was
not
just
just the, probably gonna say the same thing. Go.
Yeah.
It's not just the real life sim of the place. We actually have our respiratory therapists and our techs and our nurses. The nurses actually get paid to come and do it like off their shifts. So we actually, if you're having a pediatric, sim code, you actually ask for the respiratory therapist. The respiratory therapist is there and has to get the real stuff, and the nurse has to pull up the medicine from the place and do it. And so it's all as high fidelity as we can, because we actually have all of our nursing tech, all the other colleagues that are there with us doing it.
pharmacist.
So it kind of really adds it. Pharmacists.
I think that was something that was very unique to Rush, is how advanced our simulation training is and how often we do it in conference. So thanks for addressing that one. I'm going to jump back to Braden to talk a little bit. You briefly kind of talked about it in the intro, but if you could just do an overview of all the different sites that we go to throughout our 3 years here at Rush.
Yeah, for sure. We want you to experience the full breadth of emergency medicine. We don't just create one kind of emergency physician. We're all at an academic medical center, and that's going to be your home base. But that's actually not the majority of what jobs are like out there. So we have you go to some other emergency departments in the Chicago area to really get some other experiences of what community emergency medicine looks like, what county looks like. And so the 3 other emergency departments that you rotate at, one is Mount Sinai, which I mentioned, very busy, small hospital trauma center just southwest of us. And you rotate there for 3 ER months, and then a trauma month and the surgical ICU month. So you actually spend a fair amount of time there. Our other partner site is Rush Copley. That's within the Rush Health System. It's a community emergency department out in Aurora. So it's one of the suburbs of Chicago. It's a little bit of a hike. That's probably the one thing I always am anxious about, residents complaining about, is that it's a little bit further away than I probably would like. But every time I have residents go there, they come back and say just what an incredibly valuable experience it is to go out there. So we have you go out there for 2 months. As a second, and then again as a third year. And residents really like that site because you really get hands-on experience with a lot of procedures. You do all your orthopedic reductions yourself. They don't have a ton of backup. You send most of you learn how to stabilize and transfer things to the mothership here at Rush or other sites out there. And so you really get a great community experience. And then the other ED that you go to is what's called Community First Medical Center. This is what I would probably describe more as a critical access hospital on the near north side of Chicago. It's 100 beds. It's an ultra tiny hospital. There is not a whole lot of other medical facilities within a reasonable distance of there. So actually, despite them being a very tiny, under-resourced hospital, they actually see the highest per capita EMS arrivals of any bedded hospital in the city. So very, very high acuity, and you're working with almost nothing. So you really, really get good at critical care, intubations, lines, transferring patients out who need critical care. So you get great experience from all of this. So we don't just do, one month of community just to say we do it. We really want you to experience it so that you understand what it's like. And when it comes time to making your decisions about where you want to go, you've actually seen enough kinds of emergency medicine that you make a really informed decision. And then the one last site is the Stroger Trauma Unit. So you rotate over there at County Hospital for trauma. So ultimately, you end up seeing 5 different hospitals over the course of your time. But you still spend about 2/3 of your ED time here at Rush. So you still have a mothership, you still have a home base, and we like it when you come back.
Awesome, thank you. So our next block of questions sort of focuses around the current state of the emergency medicine job market, which I'm sure a lot of you know about and have heard about. And so I wanted to ask this to Scott. How have the residents been doing since they graduated from the Rush Emergency Medicine program, even with some of these fluctuations and changes we've seen with the job market?
So our first class, which was 2 years ago, actually it was like a pretty nice even split. So 4 of them went on to fellowship, and then 4 of them actually did kind of some sort of academic medicine where they were teaching EM residents, and then 4 of them were straight community. In this last class that just graduated, 5 went on to fellowship. So we're kind of over a third each year so far. And the rest did mostly kind of community with some academic places because some stayed on around as well. So this last year obviously was harder with, I think, nationally everywhere because of the COVID numbers and because hospitals had decreased kind of staffing. But we actually had all of our residents get jobs in cities and places they wanted to be. So I think overall we did really well, and I was really happy with where everyone went. I think one of the biggest questions you guys are all going to have that in interviews you're going to ask me is about the lack of alumni network. And it's a great question. And I think it's something that obviously, needs to be addressed. We don't have 30 years of Rush EM alumni. We have 2 years of Rush EM alumni. And so we have a smaller network, but what we do have is all of our networks. So I went to UIC for residency. I was APD there for 5 years. So I have all of my residents from one of the biggest residencies in the country that I still talk to all the time and text and talk to. And so if someone's looking for a job, I still talk to my network and talk to them. Braden knows all of New York, Tasha's got Christ and everyone around here. And so all of us have our independent networks. And just because we are the new program doesn't mean that we still don't talk to those same people, because that's how EM works. And so even though we're still building our actual Rush alumni network, we also have our own personal networks that people that thankfully, hopefully like us. And so therefore, so will talk to us when we're trying to get our residents jobs. So it has been a tough year for everybody just because of numbers, but our residents did really well, and all of them got jobs. And there are some places I know nationally where the residents lost their jobs because of COVID after signing it. Thankfully, none of ours actually had any contracts rescinded or any issues with kind of keeping their jobs.
Just to piggyback off that, I would say, go check out our faculty page on the website and see where our faculty come from. We have recruited faculty specifically to help us build this residency program, but also in order to bring geographic diversity within the program. And so we have really all of the areas of the country covered within our faculty. And that's great because that your connections in the world of emergency medicine are all, who you went to residency with, and who your faculty know. So one example, today I was having a running chat with one of my co-residents who's now in Arizona, another one who is in Iowa, and then my old APD in New York, all looking and trying to ask about, what are some of the job markets look like in those regions of the country where I'm no longer present, right? And it was great. Like, so now I have a better sense of what those job markets look like. I can better advise the seniors as they're getting into the job hunt. So that's how this is going to work. You're going to lean on your faculty. You're going to lean on the people who make up, our diverse faculty, and figure out where your jobs are going to be. And it's always worked out. I know there's a lot of stress in the job market right now. I've seen this cycle come and go. Yes, it was tight last year, but I've seen more advertisements for ER jobs in the past 3 months than I've seen in 5 years. There are jobs out there. There will be jobs out there, and we'll make sure that you get them.
In terms of job training and job hunt, the second, third years on the retreat can attest this and everything else we do, but we do a how to adult curriculum that kind of runs through the conference throughout the year. And at our retreat this past week, we had special talks just based on CVs. Everyone brought their CVs, went over them to get them getting ready. We actually talked about jobs and contracts in the different markets out there. And at our conference on Thursday, we're actually breaking up into classes and going over cover letters, how to interview, what questions to ask, and different things about jobs. So we actually make that as part of our curriculum. So it's not just, oh, third year, oh crap, what do I do to get a job? That it's actually kind of, you'll learn more about the markets and what the different jobs are as you go through the residency. I want you guys to be prepared to be successful physicians, not just great ER docs, but to know what you're doing and what the job market's like. So we actually incorporate that into our kind of longitudinal curriculum.
Awesome. That answered the next question that I had up. So that was perfect. Our next kind of block goes into more of some of the extracurricular activities. So residency is more than just training and seeing the bread and butter stuff when it comes to emergency medicine and getting your trauma experience. I know for me as an applicant, this was also a really big thing. So I wanted to see if any of our residents or faculty could talk a little bit about what different things we do here at Rush to really engage with the communities that we serve here in our emergency department and then at some of our off-service sites.
So I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but I also have been here the longest as a learner. So I'm fairly involved with the street medicine program. We have a partnership that it's actually like, so at Rush, the medical student department, or the medical college is super invested in the community. And so some of our involvement as residents is kind of like tacking on to what they already do and just being like a physician partner. And so this street medicine program that I'm involved with, there is an organization in the city of Chicago called the Night Ministry, and they do amazing work with the homeless population. And as part of that, on Saturdays, their van will drive around the city with a physician and a medical student to then provide kind of like medical care for where patients are at. It's been like super rewarding for me, just getting like kind of firsthand knowledge. And sometimes you like see people and you're like, oh my gosh, if I saw you in the emergency department, like it'd be like this. But like I talk to them and they're like, there's no way I'm going to the emergency department. And you're like, okay, well, like you're an adult, you can make your own decisions. How can I then like mitigate your risk? What can I do to like, try to improve your situation? What resources can I provide for you? And how can I tell you to like watch out for things? And then of course, addressing their like acute medical concerns. One of the things that I love about Rush, and people ask me like why I did my residency where I did my med school, because that comes with pros and cons. One of the pros is why I love Rush is that as an institution, they really like put their money where their mouth is. So, we have like there's an organization called Westside United that Rush is a huge partner in that focuses primarily on the south and southwest side of Chicago. And they invest a ton of money and a ton of resources into the patient population that then comes to our hospital. So, of course, we provide good medical care inside our four walls of the emergency department. But then also we have institutional backing to then provide care and funding and resources to outside of that. There is a ton of work, and there are many people whose whole job at Rush is to kind of work and engage with community engagement and community health. And so, that spans from like, yeah, sure, partnering with night ministry and going to find homeless people to make sure that their health is addressed. But then also that involves like, pipeline programs of providing funding and sponsorship for people that go to the community college across the highway, that then they can come and be medical assistants, and then they can have a tract of a longitudinal mobility upward, so that they're not just hired as a patient care technician. That's it. I mean, there's some nurses in our departments that used to be patient care technicians in our department. And so that's actually my favorite thing about Rush. Like the people are amazing, but then also like the institution has like a backbone and has like a mission and has like drive. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a session in a few weeks that really highlights not only applicants who are underrepresented in medicine, but also emphasizes our stance on not only diversification within the program and what Rush's, what their perspective is on that, but also with what we do to help our communities here who do come from very diverse backgrounds. And there's plenty of different community initiatives that we have here. This leads nicely into the next question, which I will hand over to Scott, about the different types of committees that we have here at Rush. And if we have one that someone isn't interested in, how easy is it to set that up?
So we have a lot of committees. We have a lot of involvement, and we actually send out kind of at the beginning of the year, I think we just sent out a couple weeks ago, essentially of all the different committees we have in gauging interests. We have an EMRA rep who is a representative to EMRA. We have a wellness committee, which actually has attendings and residents on it. As Kasha said, we have the PEC, which is the program evaluation committee, where you actually meet to look at the program and say, what can we do better? Harrison and I lead, or whoever the education chief the years, we actually lead the conference committee, and a bunch of people here on that. So we meet a couple times a year. We sit down and just say, what's working well with conference? What's not? What do you guys want to include? What do you guys want to do better? And there's been a lot of things that we've added solely based on that. They say, hey, we want one of the first years, we want to do a journal club where each of us presents an article, a 5-minute journal club. Cool, we do it now. That's now part of the conference. We want more EKGs and x-rays. Cool, that's part of the conference now. And so all that is from the committees and sitting in there that everyone has involvement in. We have a kind of dire program. We have a social global EL, emergency medicine kind of committee with a lot of the residents involved, and actually was initially the plan to set up actually more patients or more people from the department, not just residents and faculty, but actually nurses and techs and security guards. And so we have a lot of committees already set up. But if there's something you're really, really passionate about, that if we don't have it yet, just talk to us and we'll do our best to get it. And so even if we don't have it already, if it's something reasonable, hey, I want to do this, cool, let's do it. And let's try it. We're pretty experimental in terms of willing to try things. And if it doesn't work, then hey, we tried. But if there's something you really want to do and passionate about, just let us know and we'll do our best to get it out there.
Yeah, thank you. I think that as an intern, there were so many, and it was hard to like there were so many I wanted to do and was interested in. And I think we have a good list of those on our website. And if you guys have any specific questions on some of those committees and the specialty tracks we have, Braden, I was wondering if you could sort of highlight, in addition to that, about some of the specialty tracks we do, like if people are interested in ultrasound or EMS or medical education, how they can get involved in that early on as a resident.
Yeah, some programs have these like dedicated tracks that have a set curriculum. We don't have that as much because I would much rather that we build something that is individualized for what you want to get out of it. So really, it's more that we are very deliberate about the mentorship. If you have a particular area of interest, we get you connected early on with our faculty that are involved in that, so that you actually develop your electives to be tailored to what it is that you want to do. Part of that is, again, part of the point of having you spend more time in our department as an intern. We actually get to know you a little bit earlier. So we launch you into projects and mentorship much earlier on in the program, because we actually get to recoup some of that time by getting you into ED early. So we get to learn what you're interested in, what you're really passionate about, and we get you connected with faculty who do that. So whether that be ultrasound, so we have fellowships in ultrasound simulation, and we also, it's housed in psychiatry, but we've had a lot of interest in addiction medicine, and actually most of the providers are emergency physicians in that group. Those are the areas that we've had residents be, develop more tailor-made longitudinal programming over the course of their program. We've also had residents who are very interested in critical care. We've had in 2 classes, we've had 3 people do fellowships in critical care, probably more coming up soon. I'm sorry, 2, probably 1 coming up. And we want to make sure that you get to explore that, right? So we have developed a couple of electives that if you want to do it, great. If you want to do something else, we'll work with you to try and come up with time for those electives. And then the other big area that we've had residents be interested in is informatics. So we started an informatics fellowship this year. It's an emergency physician, even though it's housed within the Department of Internal Medicine. It's part of my goal in getting emergency doctors all over in the institution. We're just going to take over all the fellowships eventually, and try to find great mentorship with faculty in some of these other departments. There's a lot of support to kind of help drive what it is you're interested in and find the right mentorship for that.
Well, thank you so much. Out of sort of respect for everyone's nights and time and everything, I do want to provide the chance for anyone to submit some of their questions either in the chat here, or if you want to raise your hand either via Zoom or physically. I think I remember last year during interviews, I didn't know that there was like a raise your hand thing, and I was like holding my hand up. So either way, whatever you'd like to do, feel free to kind of drop any questions you guys have as we sort of wrap things up here. I see that, I think Allah, I apologize if I mispronounced that, but please feel free to answer or ask your question.
Hi, I'm Ala. I have a really small question. What kind of makes you guys the most excited for this upcoming year of new residents? Like, what are you looking forward to the most? What's kind of really making you excited?
I can answer, even though I've talked a lot. So I'm going to be interviewing a lot of y'all this year, and I'm just excited to see like where things go. So, I mean, like we've talked about, we're kind of a new program, and that definitely comes with like some things that you might be apprehensive about, but that also comes with a ton of opportunity. There's so much like to learn and to do. And so, for instance, so I'm part of the 3rd graduating class, and there was nobody that did that had like as much of a social emergency medicine interest as I do. And so I wanted to do my 2nd year elective in that. And so I just designed my own. I have like tons of support with the faculty to do it. So to answer your question, it's like what is to come, what you guys are interested in, what you're passionate about, and what you can bring to Rush.
Thank you, Harrison.
And then I see that Peter has his hand up.
Hey, yes, thank you. Appreciate it. You talked a little bit about the kind of like after like residency, like fellowship type stuff, career stuff. You mentioned critical care, which is one of the areas I was interested in possibly pursuing after residency. But I was curious if you have any kind of EMS exposure during your time at Rush, or anybody that's pursuing like a track in like EMS fellowship post residency or anything like that.
Yeah, one of our recent graduates went on to do an EMS fellowship at the University of Buffalo, and so she was able to explore some of that while she was in residency. We do have an active EMS faculty. You're going to be involved in some of our drills. We used to do these a lot more frequently prior to COVID. Now, since we're kind of living mass casualty, the need for some of these drills has kind of become less important, but we still do some of them. So if you're interested in being on like our disaster committee and some of those things, you can. We have a elective with the University of Wisconsin for their med flight program, which is not something that we have, but we went out and found a partner who was willing to host our residents to do some of that stuff. And then ultimately, I think, you just look at Rush. Rush has really come forward in the past year as being, a true COVID hospital. We were designed as the region's bioterrorism response center. In fact, the facility itself of Rush was designed to actually take care of pandemic response. And so, so many of those EMS principles have come out in the past year as we've really pivoted the whole institution to be the region's COVID center. We had the most vented patients of any hospital in the state. We are the busiest transfer center of any hospital in the state. And so we actually have a lot of EMS protocols that actually need some work and collaboration, and being on some of those committees as a resident is kind of a cool opportunity that you might get a chance to do. So we don't have a EMS fellowship yet. I would expect, and I hope, like we are built to have, something like a pandemic response fellowship in the future at some point. So we're still not done innovating. Rush, continues to come up with new and innovative programs.
Thank you for your answers. Appreciate it.
And last year, I'll have Michael. Feel free to ask your question.
Hi, I remember one of the faculty had mentioned the wellness committee. Can you guys talk about any like wellness initiatives or bonding events that you guys have had to kind of promote the relationships amongst residents and faculty?
Yeah, I was wondering if Kasha, if you could kind of talk about some of the wellness. I think we have any of our specific faculty members who do that, but I know that you've been involved with some of our efforts in the past.
Yeah, sure. So I honestly, I think part of the biggest thing with wellness is, what is your everyday life like? So I know that there's all these like wellness initiatives and focusing on these like big events, yada, yada. But I honestly think part of wellness is just like what going to be like in residency on a day-to-day basis. And I think we pride ourselves on, I'm the scheduling APD, and I think we do a pretty good darn job of making sure that our residents feel overall well and happy and mentally healthy from a like shift schedule. So like we provide 2 golden weekends when you are in our ER block, and we do our darndest to make sure that that happens. And I hope that the residents can speak to that. That's actually something that happens. We don't actually have a scripted schedule where it's like, oh, you're pawn A, pawn B, pawn C, and this is your schedule. Your schedule is made specifically so that there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of thought that goes into, it's a lot of work the scheduling chiefs that have to do, but it is very specifically tailored to make sure that, we do allow that flexibility. So I think that speaks to the overall from a wellness perspective. And Rush is a huge center that has been very focused on physician wellness. There is a wellness center. If you go to our website and look at our wellness center, it is something that Rush does pride itself on, and it is very focused on, providing resources. And so if there is very special needs for, seeking out therapy, things like that, that is something that's very easy and accessible here. The other things, we do, the orientation month was great. It was like a very big month where we did a lot of events. Otherwise, we do a journal club, which is back to live, which is great. I think also not every month, but we try our really hardest from a scheduling perspective. I know that Ben, the last schedule he made sure that every class had 1 week where they would have a day that everyone was off in that class. And so, those are meant for the residents to utilize as we all in this year have our day off. Let's make sure that we get together. I hope that speaks to some of the things. The wellness committee does throw that. Sarah Hawk always has her pumpkin carving thing in the fall, and there's let's plant some plants together thing. And so there's lots of things that always pop up, but I hope that kind of explained the overall wellness perspective.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I added some of the other stuff in the chat too, just in the interest of time.
Yeah, I was going to say also just quick little aside. So one really cool thing about Rush and wellness is when you're on a Rush EM month, you get to have 2 weekends off for that month, which is like so rare and unique. So if you have family, if you have a significant other, if you want to have a weekend to see friends, like you get that opportunity. You're not always having to work every weekend, which I found to be very important and just emphasizes the wellness here at Rush. So that's another cool thing. We unfortunately are kind of at the end of our session today, but we just wanted to thank everyone so much for coming out. We hope that you got to learn a little bit more about the emergency medicine program here at Rush. Hear a little bit about all of our perspectives and why we chose Rush, why we continue to stay at Rush for some of our faculty. We hope to have a few more of these sessions this year. And if you have any more questions, like please reach out to any of us residents. We're happy to talk with you a little bit more about the program or answer any other nuances kind of off the record. And hope you all have a great night and good luck to everybody with this application season.
Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks Ashley for coordinating and moderating everything. And thanks to all the residents and faculty that came out tonight. I really appreciate you guys.